Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Talk to me. So why don't we get ourselves started? We'll open up with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first off, thanks for coming out this morning. I hope your driveway's not as bad as mine. And maybe your car had a little less ice on it than mine did this morning.
I've seen both at 5-0.
We are running in a kind of combined format today where we have some people participating.
Recording in progress.
Zoom teleconference. And we have some people presumably watching on cable. And so as a result, we're going to have to be extra careful to use the mic when we're speaking so that the folks that are not here can kind of hear. People on Zoom can request through Diane to ask a question so we may hear from them, but they can't vote because they're not here and they're not checked in. So basically, just as a little bit of background, I think most of us in this room probably have heard this many times because I see a lot of familiar faces, but this is the roughly 273rd year that Newton has existed, and we've had 268 or more town meetings, and so we're a part of that tradition, a proud part of it, and I think that's, it's an important thing to recognize, what we're doing here. So, in terms of introductions, who's here with us today? I'll start with the Board of Selectmen, although not in order. It's Larry Foote, Chairman, Charlie Melvin, Vice Chairman, Kate Michaels and Edvin Kronolik are participating by Zoom. Matt Burrow to my right from the Selectmen. Nancy Wrigley, our Town Administrator on the far left end. Diane Moran, Board of Selectmen Secretary, and also manning the Zoom teleconference. So if we have questions from that side, Diane, you're going to need to wave at me or otherwise get my attention on that.
I'm on a squirt gun.
Yeah, that'll work. To my left, Mary Jo McCullough, our town clerk. And then I'm pleased to introduce our new assistant town clerk, Tony Suskelwitz. I should be able to say names like that because of my last name. But I also want a special shout out to someone else who's in the room today, and that's Cheryl Saunders, who has done a fantastic job over that for many years in that area. And I don't think I had the personal opportunity to thank her in public before, so thanks, Cheryl, for all your work. And since I did that, Cheryl's going to still volunteer and help in elections and stuff, if Ron will let her. All right, so we also have supervisor of the checklist today, Julie Lemire checking people in, and James Saucier on the cable, making sure that the people watching on the cable TV can see us today. So again, with them in mind, when we do speak from the audience, I'm going to ask you to use the microphone. What we're going to do is, as usual, we're going to discuss, potentially amend, and then put the articles on the ballot for voting in the upcoming second session. We're going to try to go through it quickly. I'm going to be reading the warrant articles themselves, and then I'll be turning to someone to make the initial, start of the discussion. We probably have some articles that there's not going to be much discussion on because they're the kind of housekeeping articles we have every year, so we can probably run through them pretty quickly. And then everyone, of course, the next step is, after this meeting, will be the second session of the town meeting, which is on Tuesday, March 8th. And we always hope for good weather because sometimes at that time of year we have a challenging weather day. And also, as a reminder, this upcoming Wednesday on February 9th at 7 p.m. is the school district deliberative session, and that will be conducted at the high school auditorium in Kingston. So everyone who is interested in that should be, is welcome to attend there and may want to attend that meeting as well. As a final item before we get started, it is, deliberative sessions are meetings for towns, and therefore, in general, the participants are residents of the town. If you're a non-resident and you're here, you can't vote, but we do have probably at least one non-resident here we definitely want to hear from. So I'd just like everybody to confirm that would like to hear from our police chief, Mike Jewett, who is, of course, present today and has a lot of interesting things to say. So does anyone have any objection to him speaking as a non-resident? Hearing none, which I knew, we're looking forward to hearing from Mike as the course of the day. If there's someone else who's a non-resident who has something important to add in the course of the meeting, then they should just kind of wave at me and we'll do the same kind of approval for them. Again, I think the information is out there on the website for people who are trying to participate by the Zoom thing, and Diane will be, flagging me for those people. So, on to the warrant. So this is the town warrant for 2022. Polls will be opening from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the second session. To the inhabitants of the town of Newton, New Hampshire, in the county of Rockingham, in said state, qualified to vote in town affairs, you are hereby notified to meet for the first session of the annual meeting, which shall be for the explanation, discussion, and debate of each warrant article, and the transaction of all business other than voting by official ballot to be held at the Newton Town Hall on Saturday, February 5th, 2022 at 9 a.m. The second session to be held at the Newton Fire Station, 8D Merrimack Road in said Newton on Tuesday, the 8th day of March next at 8 o'clock in the forenoon. And I like that part because that's one time a year when I get to use that word. To choose all necessary town officers for the ensuing year by official ballot and to vote on all issues before the town of Newton on the official ballot. The polls to be open at 8 o'clock in the forenoon and to close not earlier than 8 o'clock in the evening. The first is to elect all necessary town officers for the upcoming year. They'll be on the ballot. And then we have our first warrant question. Shall the voters of Newton authorize the planning board to create and annually update a CIP, capital improvement program, in accordance with New Hampshire RSA 674:5? Would anyone like to speak to that issue? You don't have to, but if you want to, come right ahead.
I'm Annie Collier, and I'm on the planning board. We haven't had a capital improvement plan in writing for quite a while, and the board of selectmen has agreed to help the planning board make sure that we get all the input so that we have a good CIP for forward planning for the town, so we can take care of our infrastructure. So please vote in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on Article 2? Seeing there are none and no amendments, Article 2 shall appear on the ballot as presented. And I will note the planning board does recommend that article 7-0. Article 3. Shall the town of Newton raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $4,375,000. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $3,997,853, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Newton or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. And then the additional notes are added that the estimated budget increase from the 2021 actual budget to the 2022 proposed budget represents a tax impact increase of $0.471, roughly, per $1,000 of assessed value. The default budget would result in an estimated tax impact increase of $0.467, or approximately 47 cents, per $1,000 of assessed value. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 4-1, and I'm going to turn to the selectmen. And Larry, do you want to? Who's going to take it in the board?
So it has increased somewhat because we had several departments with prices rising and the cost of labor and all that. With the fire department went up just a little, along with the road agent. Police department went up quite some because we had the new SRO officer this year, and training and all. And he hired and another part-time. So I think it was like almost 300,000 that it went up total for all departments combined. It's just a necessary increase to keep up with times and keep up with the labor cost, the price of fuel, the price of everything that's going up.
Other comments from the board? Mr. Melvin?
I'm the no vote, as usual. I have a real problem. I feel as though that the town of Newton should not be paying for an SRO officer for a school that's not in our district. It doesn't belong to us. It's Seacoast Learning. And I feel that the police department's going up $164,000, from $741,000 to $905,000. That's an awful increase. Last year, their budget was $741,000, and they gave us $47,000 back. So I can't see the need for that. So whether we turn around, and from my understanding, the SRO officer, they're claiming that it's a contract. It is not a contract. A contract has a beginning date and it has an ending date. And in the agreement, it so states, this agreement shall be reviewed annually prior to the start of the school year. This agreement remains in full force and in effect until amended or such time as either party withdraws from this agreement by delivering a written notice to the other party. That's not a contract. So I don't feel as though that we should be doing the SRO officer. We could turn around and have a new board of selectmen, and 3 members of that board could send a letter over to the school telling them that they didn't want to do it, and we've opted out on it. That's my feeling on this. So we either should reduce the budget, or we should turn around and reduce the default budget, the Board of Selectmen, later on at another date, which is our authority under 4013.
You have anything?
Any other comments, board members?
I mean, I've said it all before. You know, if people want to go back and look at the public hearing, they can, or have looked at it already. I don't get this. I don't get where this is coming from. SRO isn't something we just did a couple of months ago. We've been working on this for 2 years. Never heard any of this for 2 years. And for me, I want to hear from the police chief first, right? Because he's our public safety official. He can talk to us about his budget and the reasoning behind this. People should understand too that this idea originated with the school district, right? So school administration came to our police chief and said, we are going to fund 80% of this, 40% of which is coming from the Seacoast Learning Collaborative. If you told me that we were going to get a new member of our police department and 40% of it was going to be paid by another entity, that's almost half of it. Like, that's an offer you can't refuse. And then 20% of it is paid by the town. I didn't do the math on this, so forgive me, round number, $24,000. That's what he voted no on the budget for, $24,000. So, I mean, for me, like I said, I'd like to hear from the department head and maybe some of the residents. That's all.
Mr. Moderator, if I may.
Yes.
State your name.
Hi, Edmund Chronolic, Selectman. I have to do that old speech of why I'm not there. Unfortunately, this morning on a take-home test, I tested positive for COVID. So out of an abundance of caution, I will be zooming in. So I just wanted to say that I agree with Matt, Selectman Burrow, and I'd definitely like the police chief to speak more on the SRO position as it comes to the budget.
Thank you. Do we have any other selectmen comment from our remote selectmen?
Kate's not on yet.
Okay. So, Chief, would you like to take the floor? I think we got a couple requests pending, and I'd like to hear it. I think we'd all like to hear the situation.
Good morning, Mike Hewitt, Police Chief of the town of Newton. The SRO position, and like what Selectman Marl had said, This was something that I was approached by the school board about 2 years ago, well, not the school board, but the school itself, saying, hey, we'd like to put this position in. The SRO, we've gone through 2 or 3 different potential people that we could have hired over the last 2 years, but because the process was taking so long, we lost out on 2 other people. We hired the 3rd. It's an 80-20 split. 80% is by the school board, or by the school, and 20% is by the PD. It's 40% by the SLC and 40% by the SAU 17. We're gaining an officer that has 20 years experience, he was an administrative sergeant on the SWAT team, and a valuable asset to the town for less than $24,000 a year. I have him through vacations, snow days, summer, and we all know that summertime is when people take vacations. So it helps me with my budget. It helps me not have to put the overtime on. I have an extra officer, and that was part of my goals and objectives set by the Board of Selectmen, was to get another officer, to hire more people. I've done that. And I think that given the fact that we're only paying $24,000 a year for a full-time certified police officer, I think I've done a pretty good job in that. I can go into it for an hour to why we need an SRO. I've had questions asked, do we have a drug problem in the school? Do we have a truancy problem in the school? And I can answer that, no, we don't. But that's not exactly what an SRO does. If I took a poll of the audience
Raise his
and
mic
asked,
a little.
I'm sorry,
All right, I get feedback. We need to raise the mic.
if I took a poll of the audience and asked,
Yeah, do you want
what does an SRO do? I don't think most people know exactly what an SRO does.
Yeah, I know, but I was gonna give it to him so he could hold like this.
No one's asked.
I know.
So I'm more than happy to tell you.
to get higher?
An SRO is not sitting
The batteries
inside
in
an
it?
office looking at a screen. He's not someone that's he's not a security guard. He's there for security purposes, but an SRO is interacting with
Yeah.
kids every single
I
day.
think I got it.
They're going out to lunch, they're going on field trips, they're doing things with the kids. I'm not gonna put anybody on the spot who has kids, but I get it all the time, that drives me insane.
They can't. No. Do you want him to take it?
No, I don't want to. I don't have to talk with my league.
All right, get as close as you can. Thanks.
I have parents often say to me, hey, I told my kid today, I'm gonna call the police if you don't get inside your car seat. Hey, I told my kid if they don't listen, I'm gonna call the police. All that's doing is putting a negative connotation on law enforcement. Everybody in here knows the last 2 years, we haven't been great. So with the SRO, I'm trying to change that. We've got a different group of kids. We have the kids at SLC, we've got the kids at Memorial. I can tell you the first week the SRO was in the SLC, he was getting flipped off every single day. That is no way to greet a police officer. Fast forward, they're high-fiving him when he comes in the building. Same thing at the Memorial. It wasn't on the Memorial, but they're saying good morning to him. They're excited to see him. He's making a difference. If we can make a difference with one kid, and the difference is we're going to parents' houses at night. We're going there for domestics. We're going there for drug overdoses. We're going there for all different reasons. These kids are seeing that stuff. The SRO going into the school and being there, these kids now can have a positive role model with the police officer instead of, hey, that's the police officer that arrested my mom. That's the police officer that arrested my dad. I walk in, you're like, I know you. And I usually cringe when the kid says, I know you, because obviously they know me from something. Sorry, I was But the SRO position is, we're gaining so much out of this, and we're not paying for that 80%. 80% of the time, we're not paying for it out of the PD's budget. But if I had an incident that happened somewhere out in town, I can pull him if I need him. And now I have that extra officer to come and help, where I didn't have it before. I'm not, I don't know how many people in here think we run 5 or 6 guys per floor. I'm telling you. My midnight guy runs by himself. The 4 o'clock guy runs by himself. We don't have that. I'm not going to give you the towns around us. I won't give you my name. But I can tell you more than half of them go home at 10 o'clock at night. and we don't have that. So to have you in the summertime for the 20%, I mean, it makes so much sense to me, and I'm passionate about why it makes sense, and if anyone has any questions to why I think the SRO is needed, other than the reasons I just stated, that we're more than happy to talk about it. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you. I mean, I think that's very helpful and very clear. More questions or discussions regarding Article 3?
I'm just not sure of the 47 cents per thousand and would like it double checked. In the school district, the impact per 100,000 is 7 cents for Newton. And if this is roughly a $300,000 increase, then it should be more like 21 cents. And either the school is wrong or this number is wrong, so if you could double check it, I'd really appreciate it.
This number is correct. It's based on the evaluation of the town.
Okay, so it's the one in the school district.
I don't know.
Got it. But just to make really sure what numbers we're talking about when people go to vote.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Patrick, Newton, I am a member of the school board, so I just want to step up and provide some background on this from the school perspective. So there is a contract between the SLC and the San Juan Regional School District. In that contract, it calls for us to split a resource officer for the premises. And that's how you get to the 40-40 split. You don't need the 20% just for the school district because the school's not there. The 20% came around from the discussions between the school and the town saying, if we already got 80% covered, are you interested in an officer for 20%? And so with discussions that have happened between the school and the town over the course of, I don't know, a year and a half plus, the agreement was, yeah, we would be interested in that, and therefore we will take it. I was at the public hearing on this, and the question came up about a number of, well, we're actually paying 38%, not 20%. And so I'd like to just explain that. So Newton pays roughly 45.2% of the school district spending based upon enrollment between us and Kingston. So you take the 45% times the 40% that the school district is paying, you get 18%, you add that to the 20%. So total is 38%. But the reality is, if we were to say, no, we don't want an SRO, the school would still contractually obligated to get that deal in, and they would still be paying that other 18%. So this body doesn't avoid that 18%, no matter what we decide. So the only thing that would be at question would be the 20%. And I think the only way from a deliberative perspective, it would be an adjustment in the budget. I don't think the voters could take line items and make adjustments. It'd be an adjustment in the overall budget as to what you take up or down. So you'd be taking up or down 24,000, and then it would be up to the board of selectmen to decide where that 24,000 would go. Would they continue to honor the agreement with the school district for the 24,000 in the police officer line, or would they take the 24,000 out of something else? So I just wanted to get that perspective out there. And the rationale was that we got an SLC as a community coming in onto the campus. It would be good to have a resource officer available in case something untoward should happen. And as Chief Jewett had pointed out, the officer will be available. So if an emergency or something else happens, the officer is not going to be sitting in the school saying, well, I'm going to wait here in case something happens here. If there's an emergency in another part of town, he'll be dispatched to the emergency in the other part of town. So I just wanted to get that perspective from how we got here and why, so that people would have that in their head as they were making their decisions. And I also wanted to explain the discussion of the dollars that occurred in the public hearing in case people watched that and were confused about where those numbers came from. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on Article 3?
The only thing I'd like to add is it was brought up earlier that this is not a contract and stuff. We don't want the public to think, and I said it before, that we willy-nilly put this agreement together. This was, as the chief talked about, we lost a couple of candidates along the way because we're negotiating with school administration for a long time to get this together. We brought our agreement to town council to have town council review it. I believe the school can speak to their side, but I believe they had their district council look at it as well. So this was, bargained for with the Board of Selectmen for, I don't think quite 2 years, but almost 2 years before we had one that we agreed upon. So.
Any other comments, Diane? Do we have anybody from the outside world?
Nope, nothing here.
No.
This resource officer was dead in the water until Tom Ambrose called me and asked me to bring it to the attention of the board. There was nothing being done about it. I spoke with Tom Ambrose on this, and he basically said to me that if we went against this, then they would have the resource officer anyway, which is true. And my feeling is that we, the taxpayers of Newton, should not be raising and appropriating the money to pay the full amount, and then we get 2 checks back at the end of the year, which goes into the general fund. So this doesn't offset his budget. His budget would be $905,000. I feel that this should have been a separate warrant article so that you all could make a difference. You all could make your own mind up about whether you wanted to do it. I don't feel as though it should be buried in his budget, and it is. And nobody would know about this if I hadn't brought it to the attention of you. And Tom Ambrose also understands where I'm coming from.
Other discussion?
Not related to the town meeting. There's 2 pickup trucks out there, a blue Nissan and a silver Tacoma. They're blocking that road down to that driveway. Nobody can get in and out of it. It'd be great if we could move those.
Yeah, why don't we, to the extent that if you're in this meeting and you're associated with one of those vehicles, we can sort of temporarily promise to not hold a vote while you run out and move the truck. I don't agree with you, Mike, as long as you get by, I'll move my truck.
You want to measure it and not get by it?
Go ahead, man, if we're just making comments and not voting and stuff, we can go ahead while they're.
You can use this.
I have a question. If this doesn't happen, are we leaving the town open to a lawsuit by the school district? We're not doing this, and either way, we know we're gonna pay. So, we're either gonna pay as taxpayers through the school district, or we're gonna pay for the town, other than that $24,000, which gains us an officer for whenever needed and all summer long.
You'll have to excuse my answer, but to your first question, probably. The school district can speak for themselves, but I would say they'd probably fight us on it.
Other questions, comments, or discussions on this article?
The only other thing I'd add is I've been on the board for 7 years. We've added officers, whether full-time or part-time. I would argue this one's a part-time, right? Because 80% is coming from the district. If anybody was going to do a warrant article, I would think the district would do the warrant article, because that's where most of the money is coming from. You'd have to speak to the district as to why they didn't do that. But we've added full-time, we've added part-time officers, we've added full-time or part-time other employees. We haven't done warrant articles in 7 years. So.
So we're gonna wait just a moment longer. Do we have any other comments on this article? So before we move on the article, I'm just gonna let the gentleman that's outside, hopefully he's not parking too far away, get himself back in here, in case he has something to say, or...
He might be in Kingston parking.
Did he look like he was parking a mile away, or is he gonna be okay?
I'm not sure if he's coming back.
Oh. Okay, well, we better not wait if we don't know. All right, if everyone's comfortable with moving ahead, I think we should. And if it turns out that the gentleman who was there wants to circle back or there's an issue or something, we can address that when we get there. So, do we have any further discussion on Article 3? Seeing none, with the caveat that we have a gentleman who might return in a few moments, Article 3 will go on the ballot as it stands now, subject to the group's reconsideration if something turns up in the next few minutes. So let's move on to Article 4. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,200 to be deposited into the Engineering and Renovation Capital Reserve Fund created in 2015. Said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. This represents the rental fees received at 8 Merrimack Road. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. And I think we're getting into that run of articles we have basically every year to move money around behind the accounts. Who wants to take that on the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, I can go over it real quick. As the moderator said, we see this every year. So for those who don't know, we have a tenant over at 8 Merrimack Road that we inherited when we took over the property. He pays us rental fees each month that goes in the general fund. In order to use that money appropriately, we put this out to the voters every year so we can move that money out of the general fund, put it in, what is it called again? It's on here.
Engineering and Renovation Capital Reserve.
Exactly, so it's usable once we do that. So hopefully everybody votes in favor of this one.
Any other comments or discussion on Article 4? Seeing there is none, Article 4 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $157,000 to be deposited into the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund created in 2006 for the purpose of maintenance, repairs, and construction of town buildings, said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Before we get to comments on that, sir, I just want to make sure you did not have an issue or an amendment or anything on the budget.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so Article 3 on to the ballot, no amendments as written. Good, we're done with that. Ms. Collier.
To close reconsideration of Article 3?
You can, yes, you need a second?
Second.
There we go. Okay, let me give a brief explanation for people who aren't familiar with this. Procedurally, as a legislative body, you, the voters, can actually come back anytime before the end of the day and revisit an article, rediscuss it, and potentially amend it. You have the opportunity to vote to say, no, we're not going to do that. And it's kind of an unusual vote in that once you've made that vote, you can't come back and change it. And it will just end up on the ballot, on voting day as it stands. So that's probably the only decision you can make that you can't reverse in the course of the meeting, but it has the obvious benefit of not making people stay to the end of the meeting, in essence, to defend an article that they potentially amended earlier. So, any discussion on the motion?
Can we hear the motion one more time? Because
Yeah,
the mask and the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I move to close any reconsideration of Article 3.
Right. It's a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, so there will be no reconsideration of Article 3. It will go on the ballot as written. So, on Article 5, who would like to speak to Article 5, Mr. Selectman?
So, yeah, this is for building repairs and maintenance repairs on all town buildings. And what it just says, we're going to appropriate the sum of $157,000, which is coming out of the general fund balance. So there's no taxes to be raised. It's just insurance that we have the money to fix a leaking roof, or the town clerk's office we had to do the floor over this year because it was shifting. Just, maintenance on all town buildings. Anybody else?
Mr. Melvin?
We have $2.4 million in the unexpended fund balance, so to take out $100,000 and, well, $157,000 to do the repairs that we need in reference to the police station, I see no reason why we shouldn't do this.
Trish McCarthy would like to speak. Go ahead, Trish. You're on mute. There you go.
Hi. Sorry about that. So this is not necessarily a comment. I don't know if I'm completely out of order, but anyone at the town hall that goes up to speak to the microphone, us in TV land, I can't hear you. Speak directly to the mic. Don't turn to the side. And maybe it's clearer. I know everybody that's spoken, Annie, the chief, the other gentleman, I haven't been able to understand anything. And I don't know if I'm the only one out there. Maybe it's just my ears, but I'm just requesting you stand close to the mic.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you, Bob.
Trish also serves as assistant moderator and on occasion has served in my stead as the moderator pro tem. So I take her advice as important, and hopefully we can get the mic working better.
I think it's the masks, Bob.
Oh, I'm sure it's the masks, along with the mic and everything else, right?
So I'm hearing from one of our millions of viewers in TV land, and she said the same thing. So on cable, it's also an issue. So thank you, Trish.
So, yeah, thank you, Trish, and to the people on cable and the people listening remotely, we'll do our best, and we will, shout at our mics or whatever else we can do to try to get the sound better. And if you're still having problems, don't be bashful. Please, send a message in to Diane or somehow let us know that we need to work on the audio. Okay, back to Article 5. Any other comments or questions regarding Article 5?
What did Charlie just say?
Hi, Lisa Garner,
Lisa, the little mic, the big tall one, that's just there you go. Sorry.
Okay, Lisa Garner. First, I want to say that just last year, they took $300,000 from the unexpended fund balance and used it for this account and then spent it all on the fire station. Now the town is looking for another $160,000 for other town buildings. Personally, I think now $450,000 plus is a lot of money to be asking from the taxpayers in 2 years' time. I would like to move to amend Article 5 to change the sum of to $75,000 for this purpose. So just the sum.
Do we have a second?
You want a second?
Huh?
A second.
Yeah, I think I hear a second from there. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the proposed amendment, which is to change the dollar amount from $157,000 to $75,000. And I think we've heard a proponent for why that. Other people, other discussion comments about that?
Hi, Annie Collier. I would like to hear what the fund balance is. I didn't do that.
Just let it'll be fine.
Gravity.
Just leave it on the floor.
It'll be fine where it is.
I'd like to hear what the fund balances currently are. Mr. Melvin referred to 2.4 million in unassigned fund balances. I know we've been funding some capital reserves. I think it would be helpful for all of us to really know where we stand and what has been spent. So that we have, I thought there would be an annual report, but there isn't one here. So if somebody could go through where we stand, that would be very helpful.
Okay, can we take a second? Is that readily available from anyone?
I think the budget shows it.
I've got you. Joe, hang on. If you want a minute to look for that.
What specifically are you looking for?
Steve, so that's probably why.
Do you
The
know?
total?
Yeah.
We have a lot of fund balances. Typically in
Right.
the annual report, it gives the current status and the change over the past year. We don't have that information available to us in print today, so I was wondering if someone could give us that information.
We don't,
I think we might see the guy who knows that. Joe, do you want to talk to that? I think you're probably pretty familiar with that.
Joe has all this on the tip of his
Yeah,
tongue.
he may know
Joe
that.
Simone, trustee of the trust funds. Right now, there's $106,442 in that account.
Talk to the mic,
Say what?
to the mic.
Where?
Right in front of you.
The little
tiny
one.
Right in front of you.
Sorry about that. Currently, there's $106,442.12 in that account. That's as of December 31st.
is
Ms.
that,
Collier, was that the question you were trying to get the answer of, or are you interested in the other fund account? Mr. Mellon, sorry, let me just ask this question myself. Mr. Mellon, you mentioned that was the 2.4 million, which balance is that?
It was from the, we call it Nancy's bank,
the unexpended fund balance?
the unexpended fund
So
balance.
that's funds
And
that we,
That's different from the.
That's different
trustee.
from what Joe's talking about.
moderators don't normally ask questions, but I'm just trying to streamline the process to help, I think, all of us understand. That balance, the unexpended funds balance, is the money raised from taxes
That's
that's
the
not
money.
spent?
That's the money that goes into, at the end of the year, the general fund, any money's left over goes into that.
That's the 2.4 you talked about earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
2.4 million or whatever it is.
I think at 106, what Joe's talking about is the fund we're moving it into, correct, Joe?
Into the capital reserve.
With this article, we'd move it into.
There's a couple guys in front of you, but let them go. Never mind, you've been waved to the front of the line.
Nancy, that's money that's been, that 2 point whatever million you said has been accumulated over many years.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And a lot of it is earmarked. So, if we've got uncollected taxes, whatever, there's certain categories, there's 5 different categories, and the auditors tell us what the unexpended is that we can ask to take money out of. But the others are earmarked for specific things. And at this point, Annie, in answer to your question about the unexpended fund balance, the auditors are coming next week to do the balance sheet, which will go in the town report. Town report has not gone to the printers yet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, hi, Jamie Fitzpatrick from Newton. So the warrant is for $157,000. The amendment on the floor is for $75,000. It would be helpful for the people in the audience to understand what the intent is of the $157,000. Where is it earmarked for? Therefore, what would we not get if we accepted the amendment? So I don't have a feel for what the intended $157,000 is for, how it would be spent, and why we need $157 versus $75. So any education you could provide us on that would help us to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman, somebody want to?
This money is to do repairs, needed repairs on the police station. If you go to the police station and you take a look at the building, the bottom of the building is all rotted out. It's getting insects in there, it's getting mice in there, as well as on the second floor where we rent, it don't meet codes for the simple reason they have glass sliders that don't have any protection. You can open up this glass slider and fall out. Them need to be closed up and windows need to be put in. And there's other things in the town that we need to spend. To get back to what Lisa was commenting about, we sold the old fire station for $357. We sold it for $380,000, which that money was basically earmarked to finish the fire station.
No, it
And
wasn't.
we spent $300,000 of that. We have $57,000 left. That didn't go into the unexpended fund balance. It just went into our little kitty. So we're not asking for $457,000 out of the unexpended fund balance.
I'd just like to jump in. I'm not disagreeing with everything Charlie said. I don't think it was ever earmarked
No, it wasn't.
to finish the fire station. But what was talked about, and we've talked about it for a few years, is, and Charlie alluded to it, we have these aging buildings, right? And we're very likely going to be going years and years with these aging buildings. So to kind of offset the money the voters invested in to build the new fire station, to offset that, we could use money out of this account. I think it was last year or the year before that we had to add money to the line item for building repairs, right? If we had money in this account, we don't need that line item anymore, right? Because we can take from this with the zero tax impact. The only thing I would add, as a selectman, as an agent of this account, I'm not planning on spending this money tomorrow, you know what I mean? It's not like March 8th it gets approved and we start spending it. I think the thing is, the buildings are aging. Charlie's just described some stuff. This is talking about putting the money in for usability purposes so that we can go to it without going back to the taxpayers. 75,157 to answer Jamie's question. I'm gonna sound wishy-washy on you, but I don't think that's a showstopper, but I think the board, and the board can speak for themselves, I think they went with the 157 to get closer to the amount of the overall sale, rather than going, 75 this year and perhaps 2, 3, 4 years down the road, having to do it again, so.
Just to add on to that, recently the department has submitted a list of the repairs they needed. So we probably came up with this number to take care of probably 80% of that list, hopefully. So that's how we figured that. It wasn't just thrown out of the air. We got a list from each department head on what they need for their building for the upcoming year.
I don't want to sound too optimistic, but I'd love to go 10 years with this account, but,
Yes, sir.
Jim Baker, Newton. So what I'm hearing is if we take 157,000 out of the 2 whatever million, it goes into a separate reserve fund for maintenance on buildings.
Yeah.
If we only take 75,000, it comes out of the same separate reserve fund, but it's the same money, whether it's in the unassigned fund balance or whether it's in the capital reserve fund. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it comes out of the same source.
It's the same source.
Right.
But it's just, we have less of it, and we may, 5, 10 years down the road, we have to go back there to take.
Right, so if you put it into the capital reserve fund, it's there to be used for maintenance. You don't have to do the extra exercise of moving it out of the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, every March, right?
Right.
That's what you would have to, you'd have to wait till March to move it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the other part of that is, out of this amount, 57,000 was the remainder of the money that we had, that we didn't take when we sold the building. Last year, 300,000 was used, and that was supposed to be for all the town buildings, but that got changed and earmarked to do all the life safety things at the fire station. So there's about 40,000 or whatever that still remains in there that the fire department can still use for, repairs. But we have, our town hall is falling apart. The foundation outside is all chipping away. The birds have been eating it, and we need to get the siding has holes in it. We've got bees and infestations, yep. And
You're making me want to leave right now.
well, I'm just saying, these buildings are old. I mean, this was built 100 and something years ago. We need to maintain them, or we're not going to have a town hall or a library. We're all doing the best we can with what funds are available to us, but 157,000 is not too much to ask when you look at the amount of things that need to be repaired.
Hi, Annie Collier, thank you. It's partly why we need a capital improvement fund. You spoke, Nancy, about buckets of money for the 2.4 million, and what I'd like to know is, in the bucket that's unassigned fund balance, if you take 157,000 out, what's left? Does that deplete the bucket, or is there still money in that bucket for emergencies?
No, the 2 million is what we have in that fund.
Right.
The unassigned fund balance.
But you said that there were buckets, 5 different buckets.
They're not buckets. They're categories that are set up. You have unexpended fund balance. You have, I forget the names of them, things that are assigned fund balance. You've got all kinds of things that are pending when the auditor does their thing, they know how much taxes are still owed. That's in that category. It can't be spent because we haven't received it. So there's all kinds of categories in there. The only one that we can actually access is the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so I had been getting, I've been getting confused with that. So out of all the buckets or categories that there are,
Yep.
2.4 million is the amount in the unassigned fund balance, and when you take out 157,000 out of that, there's still going to be 2.25 million dollars in that.
Yep.
That's all I wanted the clarification.
And it may be higher, it may be lower when they do the audit for 2021. We'll know that probably next week.
Mr. Simone.
Joe Simone, Newton. Folks, every year this question comes up in one form or another, and I think every year I come up and basically say, we need to take care of our infrastructure and our town buildings. We're not trying to nickel dime anything. These are things that if you go around, you're in these buildings, you can see what needs to be done. So I think we're just squibbling over basically nothing. We should get it done so that way we have the money when these things come up and get it done. I mean, a typical example is we had to put a new roof on the library. There was a certain amount of money, it comes out of the library fund, but there was a certain amount of money expended. But when they opened up the roof, they found out, yeah, they had to put more sheeting up and stuff like that. So that money was there, it's to use. So I don't think we're trying to nickel dime anybody. It's just that the money is there. Let's have it available so that way we don't have to wait a year to come to the town to have a warrant article to go through the same crap all over again. What are we using the money for? It's there. Let's do it. Get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moran, is that a remote or?
Me.
You, okay. Hang on.
Oh, I'm going to go first?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Just, there was a question on the floor of what some of the items were that need to be repaired. So the police station needs a new AC condenser. They need signage on the exterior door. The pavement needs to, it needs new pavement around the station because right now it's dirt. An awning on the front, handicap accessible front door, lower the front counter so it's handicap accessible, outside security cameras, door readers at entrance points, and as Selectman Melvin had said, the siding needs to be repaired. Let's see, garage door sensors, ventilation for vehicle exhaust, and a storage area access. That's just some of the things they requested for this year. And that's just one building. I can go on if you'd like.
Okay, so first I'd like to say that I'm all in favor of repairing the town buildings. It's why when I was a selectman, I voted in favor of $300,000 going into that fund for that purpose before it was earmarked solely for the fire department. Now, there is already $100,000 in that fund currently. I'm saying that adding another $75,000 will make the balance of that fund $175,000 to pay for repairs. I am also saying that initially the board was discussing adding just $57,000 during their meetings and then increased it to $157,000 for other purposes, other repairs. They do not have the cost of what these repairs are going to be. This is an arbitrary number based on what it is they think they need. Every penny that comes out of the unexpended fund balance does keep our tax rate up, even if it doesn't make it go down. May not add, but if they don't have the money in the unexpended fund balance, they cannot use unexpended fund balance to decrease the tax rate when it's time to set it. I'm asking for a little fiduciary responsibility. Let's ask for $75,000, not $157,000.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Simone.
Joe Simone, Newton, that $100,000 that we're talking about, can anybody tell me what the tax impact on that $100,000? I think it's probably pennies to say, but I'm not sure.
000 something.
Excuse me?
It's minute. It doesn't even.
So it's really a moot point. It's $100,000. We have the money. Let's put it in there to, for whatever we need it for down the road.
Okay, do we have any further discussion or shall we vote on the amendment? Vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The nays carry.
By the way, somebody tried to vote on Zoom.
That's all right, they can't, but that's fine. So, any other discussion amendments of Article 5?
I'd like to move to avoid reconsideration, close reconsideration, whatever is the correct word.
Restrict.
Restrict reconsideration.
Do we need any discussion on that, or can we simply vote yes or no?
So can I ask, is it changed into 75 then?
No, the amendment failed, so it's
Okay,
at 157.
gotcha.
The
Okay.
question is, are we going to let
Okay.
it come up for further discussion in the course of this meeting?
Do you need a second?
We have a second?
Okay, yep. Yes.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 5, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes carry, so Article 5 will go on to the ballot as is, without amendment. Let's go to Article 6. Shall the town modify and expand the purpose of the inspection fees revolving fund to include paying for all aspects of the building safety department? This would include, but not be limited to, 30% or more of the code enforcement officer's salary, and up to 100% of the equipment and supplies needed for the operation of the building safety department. 90% of permit fees from the building inspector, plumbing inspector, and electrical inspector, and 100% of permit fees from the road inspector and health inspector will be deposited into this fund. The money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's unassigned fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon the order of the governing body, and no further approval is required by the legislative body to expend. This revolving fund was established in 2015 for the purpose of paying inspector fees for permits. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. Who would like to address that? Do we have the Selectmen want to
So
take that?
basically, and then we'll have code enforcement come up. So basically, the permit fees used to go into the unassigned balance fund, so we would have to raise taxes for the building department's salary. This way, those funds are gonna go into his revolving fund, which would be less taxes being raised to pay for his salary for the year and the other inspectors. So, Mr. Donovan, if you have anything to add?
Good morning, Bob Donovan, Chief Building Inspector, also town resident. I got into this kind of late. I started in December, and I talked to Shante Wolf, the former Chief Building Inspector. Basically, this is to help with the code enforcement equipment. If my computer crashes, we can go to this fund to get a computer replaced instead of trying to find it somewhere else in the budget. Also, we have no jackets, uniforms, anything for the building department. There's no line item for anybody to have any identification while we're going to knock on people's doors. We could use it to get some type of signage for vehicles, whoever's going to doing inspections. It's basically to try and keep the budget down and to be able to still get what we need to operate as a building and code enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion regarding this article? I got,
That's all right.
you want to hold on this after Lisa? Ms. Gagnon.
Hello, Lisa Gagnon again. I actually just want to say that doing this would allow record keeping to be a lot cleaner because you're not having part of the funds paying for the departments out of the building inspector fees funds, part of it out of the operating town budget. So it'll be a lot easier to track what the building inspector, code enforcement, plumbing, all of those departments are actually spending the funds on. So that's a good thing. The other thing is, these are fees collected for this purpose, for inspections. The funds should be used for anything related to the departments that do those inspections. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Wrigley.
Yeah, I think the intention of this also was to let it be self-supporting for the department. And the budget this year is still in place in case the article fails, but next year the budget would be reduced down to 1 or 2 small line items. And obviously, we need to take caution with this account. If it's not bringing in funds, we don't want to be paying out more than what we have, but this is the goal plan of our previous building inspector. And I think it's going to benefit the townspeople as well as the department so that they don't have to worry that they don't have the funding to be able to do the necessary things that Bob just mentioned. So I think this is a good idea, and it'll be watched each year by the treasurer as well as the Board of Selectmen to see if it's becoming too low or whatever. It depends on how many permits come in. And then they can judge it each year to make sure that, you know, it's going to replenish itself.
Any other comments, questions, or amendments regarding Article 6? Seeing there are none, Article 6 will go on the ballot as written. Article 7. Shall the town modify and expand the purpose of the Police Special Details Revolving Fund to include the purchase and/or lease of equipment and vehicles for use in police special detail work? All revenues received for the police special detail will be deposited into the fund, and the money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund unreserved fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon order of the governing body, and no further approval is required by the legislative body to expend. Such funds may be expended only for the purposes for which the fund was created. This revolving fund was established in 2007 for the purpose of paying police special detail costs. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Chief, would you like to speak to that, or the selectman, or who wants to take that one?
I think the chief is the best one to...
Morning, Mike Jewett, Newton Police Department. All I did on this was we changed a few words. What I'm looking to do is to be able to buy equipment for the officers that are on details instead of taking out of the regular account. This money is all made, it's all from details. Each hour that the officer goes out, we're getting a cruiser fee and an admin fee to do all that. So that money comes back into this account. So I'm looking over the years, we've been able to accumulate money. My detail car that we have is currently old. It dies on the side of the road more often than I'd like to admit. I'm out there jump starting it, adding antifreeze to it and different things. So I'm hoping with the change of this that in the near future we'd be able to get a new vehicle for details where it's making the town some substantial money each hour that it's out. Question?
Other comments, questions about Article 7? Seeing there are none, Article 7, hang on, Ms. Gagne.
Lisa Gardner, resident. I just want to point out that currently the balance of the Police Special Details Revolving Fund is $85,000. So if this article passes, the chief would actually be able to replace that particular vehicle. So.
Where I do agree with that, that special detail account, and I didn't want to say this, that's how I pay for the fuel for the cruisers. I don't actually budget for fuel. That gets paid for by the special detail account. So could I go out and buy one outright? Yes. I would probably recommend or ask the board if I could lease a vehicle. That would be my intent. And make payments on it over a few years. That way they don't deplete that, so I don't have to worry about my gas line item.
Thank you. And if I may say this as a taxpayer, I like that. And maybe we have plenty of details in the surrounding area. Particularly if they're from surrounding towns. So anyway, do we have any other comments or questions on Article 7? Seeing there are none, Article 7 will go on the ballot as written. Next, Article 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, as proposed by the police chief, the sum of $25,000 to be deposited into the Police, Cruisers, and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund created in 2021 for the purpose of maintenance, repairs, and purchase of cruisers and equipment. This article would result in an estimated $0.038 or about 4 cents increase per $1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. Chief, do you want to take this one as well?
I hate coming up one after another, it looks like I'm bleeding. The purpose of this account, this was established a few years ago. This is for when I have major repairs. Unfortunately, I do have an aging fleet. We've had some repairs that have been $3,000, $4,000 per car. I budget $25,000 for all vehicles to maintain them. I guess I'd have you think on your own how much it costs you for an oil change. You're driving to and from work. These cruisers are driving around almost 24 hours a day. They're out on the road at some point. They're running 8 hours a day per shift if they're out. So the oil changes are more often than not. Oil changes, when I first started 20 plus years ago, we were paying probably under $40 for an oil change. Now we're up around $100 an oil change. The cars need synthetic oil because they're running constantly. I'm just picking on oil changes because that's something that we do. That's mostly what we do, but I'm sure if everyone can think of the last time they brought their car in for repair, it gets expensive. So this is just a fund where I can reach into, so I'm not expending our budget. I didn't have much money left in it last year out of my regular $20,000 or $25,000. We almost spent the entire thing on maintenance. I do have a few vehicles that need some major repairs. We still have one that has a cracked transmission housing, stuff like that I don't want to get into repairing because the vehicles have 130,000 miles on them. But if that transmission goes, I still need that car. So we still need to respond. So that's the point of this account, is to give us the funding to fix the major things that you don't really want to fix.
So Chief, question. So if 7 passes, that is just for your detail equipment or
I'm sorry.
cars per se?
Yeah.
That money?
I didn't hear you at first, I was turning around.
7 passes for the detail special fund. That just goes to the detail car and detail equipment. It doesn't maintain your regular fleet.
No, it does not. They're
And that's what
completely
the
separate.
25 is for.
Yeah, they're completely separate. They've both been in place now for a few years. One was 2007, one was a few years ago. The detail fund is paid for by Unitil, Asplin Tree, all the detail companies. This one, we take out of the unexpended fund balance and it comes in, not trying to raise taxes, but it gives me that extra money to fix the major stuff that happens.
Thank you.
Mr. Melvin?
Could you tell us how many police cruisers and pickup trucks we have?
We have one pickup truck, and I believe we have a total of 7 cars altogether, and one of those being a detail car.
Yep.
And to expand on that further, typically on a day shift, you've got myself, you've got a sergeant, and a patrol guy, so you have 3 cars out. If I put 1 or 2 detail cars out, making money for the town, making $28 an hour, now I have 5 cars out. I've got 1 that goes to the school, so I have 1 vehicle left. There's days that we come in, and you can ask any of the officers that are sitting out here, there's no cars available. The cars break. I just had one in your shop for 3 days that I had to put a guy in another car. These cars go down, they break often. So if you don't have cars to back them up and use, then what do you do?
Just wanted the public to know how many cars we have.
Absolutely. Not having.
Other questions or discussion on Article 8? Ms. Collier?
Hi, Annie Collier. I just have a question. How much is the total capital reserve fund? When we add 25,000 to it, will it be 50 or?
Joe's got it.
Might want to get Joe a seat up front.
Yeah.
Just money, Newton, the current balance in that account is $44,853, and it was started in 2020, so it's relatively young.
$44,800.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion on Article 8?
7, I think we're still on.
No, we're in the Capital Reserve Fund 8. We're done with 7.
Okay.
On Article 8, Article 8 will go on the ballot as written. We'll go forward to Article 9.
Thank you.
To see if the town of Newton will allow the Newton Fire Department to enforce a life safety initiative that would require all buildings or structures occupied in whole or in part for residential purposes and/or commercial purposes upon the sale, transfer, rental, and/or retail businesses of such building or structure shall be equipped by the seller or owner with approved smoke detectors and approved carbon monoxide detectors as referenced in the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 72 and 101, RSA 153:10A, SAF-C 6000, to include home occupations, home businesses, and accessory apartments before occupancy. All commercial and or retail businesses shall be required to have annual life safety inspections as referenced in National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 1, 101, 13, and 72. Any fees collected under this section shall be turned over to the treasurer of the town of Newton and placed into the Uniform Fire Watch Details Revolving Fund for the Newton Fire Department, established per warrant Article 5 during the 2018 town warrant. The Newton Fire Chief or his or her designee shall enforce the provisions of this town ordinance. Chief, would you like to speak to that?
Good morning. The only thing mostly is the first paragraph that you read, Mr. Moderator, was already approved. That was 2018, that was warrant article 14. What we'd like to add, and the reason I'm using we, was the prior chief building inspector and I were gonna work on this, but he's no longer with us. We have our new building inspector here, which I'm sure won't have any arguments with it. What we'd like to add, excuse me, is to include home occupancies, home-based businesses, and accessory apartments before occupancy, and all commercial and retail businesses shall be required to have the annual life safety inspection. That bottom half is what we like to amend into Article 14.
Right, so the other first part of it already exists. Right?
Correct.
And so in essence, it's kind of adding on to the previous one, the stuff that's underlined. That's why it's underlined, so people can see it easily. Got it.
Did we, as part of the voter's guide, did we add that in there so people
I don't believe so.
We probably should just say an amendment to Article 14.
Just so people understand that
It's an amendment.
Right. Yeah.
When I sent it in, that's on me. I didn't include the previous building inspector because it was in transition, but it was jointly between, well, it's code enforcement, building and fire. When you see anything that says code enforcement, you got a team, so it's building and fire.
I think if you send it over to Diane, that's a quick update.
So is that adding wording to the article, Chief?
We're trying to amend the existing article without
So
affecting...
nothing's changed in the article, you're just announcing it's an amendment?
Well, I would believe the vote...
Well, you are adding.
Well, today you're not adding anything to what's here.
Correct. Correct.
Right, just wanted to be clear.
Correct. That's why when I sent it, I underlined what we wanted to amend to the original.
Okay, all
warrant
right.
article. So the section that's underlined is the amendment part to that warrant article.
Okay.
I keep on calling it Article 14 because that's what it was, I believe, in 2018.
Ms. Collier.
Hi, Annie Collier. I just have a question. It says that it would be enforced by the fire chief or his designee. I'm wondering what the provisions are for enforcement. You know, it's my understanding that sometimes gaining access can be difficult. So I wanted to find out what is the story behind this. Thank you.
Good question. Welcome to the state of New Hampshire. What happens now is, we'll take a home-based business. If they do not call the fire department, let me step back. If they do not call code enforcement, the only one in town that actually has more jurisdiction than code enforcement is your building inspector. The fire department, along with the building department, would have to seek an administrative order to be able to go inspect that residence. I can tell you, on houses that are being sold and being rented since this article went into effect, the majority of them have been found to be unsafe for the new tenants. We have found that smoke detectors, carbon monoxides don't exist or do not work. We found the heating device, whether it be propane or oil, that were damaged and were just obsolete. There is enforcement, because this would end up just like Article 14. It's actually, if it passes, the amendment would actually be a town bylaw. So if we were not allowed in, then the state fire marshal's office would be involved, and then it would take over. It just, with it being a town ordinance, it just gives it a little more teeth, you could say.
Thank you.
Jim Baker, resident. I've just got two questions, which I'm sure the chief can answer. The residences or commercial buildings and rental buildings would be subject to the annual inspection, but residences would be exempt from that unless they're being sold?
Yes.
Okay.
Or if they have a home-based business.
Or if they have what?
Home-based business.
Oh, home business?
There is no intent to start knocking on every house in
Right.
Southern Newton that's a single family or a multi-family house to do an inspection.
Okay.
It's by Article 14 that's already existing.
Then the other question I have, I updated all my smoke detectors to hardwired, but my house was built in 1930. And the reason I did the upgrade is because I put it on an addition. Under this NFPA, are battery-powered smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors still allowed?
For NFPA, the code enforcement it would depend on the age of the house and the renovations that were done to the house. If you have a 200-year-old house that's battery operated, you're still allowed to have battery operated. You just have to add carbon monoxide. Okay. If you do renovations to your house that require the upgrade, then you no longer can use battery. Right.
Jim, what's your address? We'll send somebody right over.
And on that, just a quick little note, we've been doing it for the past 7 years. Code enforcement does not charge to do a life safety walkthrough of any residents in the town of Newton. And if we find anything, we do not cite you for it. We just make the recommendations on how to improve safety in your house. Okay. And like I said, that's pretty attractive.
Jim Baker, just for the record, my house is hardwired, Matt. I was asking for the community because I know a lot of houses have battery-operated detectors, and I wanted to know if they were still allowed. Thank you.
Usually, Jim, when you say that stuff, you say, a friend of mine said to me.
Ms. Gagnon.
I have just one question. The article says that any fees collected, and it doesn't mention what those fees are, but it does say any fees collected will be placed into the Uniformed Fire Watch Details Revolving Fund. I'd like to hear what that fund is, what the purpose is, and how that money can be spent.
Chief?
Excellent question. Several years back, the Board of Selectmen voted on the fire department's fees. It's on the website, so anybody can look at it. Right now, for the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors for the batteries, if we're dispatched to a resident that has an issue with their smoke detectors or the carbon monoxide, for the past 7 years, as part of the life safety initiative that we brought to this town, we will provide that individual, that home, with a working smoke detector or a working carbon monoxide detector, just so I can have peace of mind, never mind they can have peace of mind. The costs to buy those smoke detectors or those carbon monoxide devices have been coming out of the fire department's budget. We took it out of the fire department's budget this year, so we're hoping if this warrant article passes, and restock up on smoke detectors, battery, and carbon monoxide battery, detectors, so when we do go to that resident's house at 3 o'clock in the morning for a faulty detector, we can leave them something so they can have a peace of mind, and we can have a peace of mind. But the fee schedule was approved by the Board of Selectmen in 2017, 2018, and it's online.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the voters? I'm going to take my prerogative as a moderator with the permission of the voters and propose what is going to be a grammatical amendment. In other words, I'm only trying to fix the first sentence a little bit. I think, and I should wait for the chief, but I think he won't have a problem with this. I think the sentence reads much more clearly. Chief, you might have missed that when you stepped out for a second. I think the first sentence where we add and/or retail businesses, I think we want to add that earlier in the sentence. So just bear with me for a second, and I'm going to propose this as a kind of a friendly amendment. I can't propose an amendment myself, but I'm going to say it, and I'm going to hope somebody says you're right, and, you know, proposes it from the chief or somebody says you're right. So the sentence says, structures occupied in whole or in part for residential purposes and/or commercial purposes, and then it gets into what happens upon the sale, transfer, rental of the building. And I think the little phrase that says and/or retail businesses really belongs up there with commercial. So it really should read, I think as a correct English sentence, it should say, all buildings or structures occupied in whole or in part for residential purposes and/or retail or commercial purposes. In other words, the retail businesses, or, you know, and/or commercial purposes and/or retail businesses, then it says upon the sale, et cetera. In other words, I'm only just trying to move that phrase where I believe it belongs, which is up with commercial purposes. Because the idea is that a retail business is a type of commercial purposes, and in other words, it's residential, retail, and commercial. Whenever they're sold, transferred, or rented, then the building or structure shall be equipped. And I hope that, is that clear to the English experts in the room? So, could my clerk make a motion to fix that sentence?
I make a motion to do what Robert said to do.
And Chief, are you comfortable with that? I mean, yeah, and I want to make sure that, Chief, are you comfortable with that? Yeah, we're just fixing the sentence. Ms. Gagne, any comments on the sentence fix?
No, I seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
I have the wording for you if you want it.
Thank you.
So after structures occupied in whole or in part for residential, commercial, and/or retail business purposes for such building or structure.
That sounds like the right English. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Do you have a upon sale on there? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I stopped talking after that. Yeah, it stays the same. You want me to write it down and then pass it to you?
Yes.
Actually, the person who really needs it is Mary Jo, so yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. Gotcha.
Yeah, you want to just hand it over? If you can, yeah. Okay.
And anybody that wants to make an amendment and it passes, you need to write it down, word for word, and give it to me.
Right, we're just trying to make sure we got it straight.
So, you know.
So we'll take a second to get that straight. I think do you want to go ahead and take the vote on it because we heard what the amendment was? Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The amendment passes. It's an English fix. Any other discussion on the warrant, you know, the substantive sense in this Article 9? Seeing there is none, Article 9 as amended with our kind of English grammar fix shall go on the ballot. Article 10, to see if the town will vote as proposed by the fire chief to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to be placed in the existing capital reserve fund known as the Fire Apparatus and Equipment Refurbishment Fund, voted in 2011. This article would result in an estimated $0.113 or about 11 cents, 12 cents if you round up, increase per $1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. Sounds like another one for the fire chief. Chief?
I have to apologize, my voice starts changing. Coming off a cold and the mask and the heat's not doing good. This article has been put in for many years. I do not add this article when the fire department is going for anything big, such as the fire truck or the fire station. So that account has been dwindled down. I think there's only 20-something thousand left in that account. Normally, you've seen it for $50,000, but everyone that lives in this country knows everything is going up. Fire trucks have gone up 10 to 20%. So if we keep it at the 50,000, you'll probably get another fire truck in maybe 10, 15 years. You're lucky. So that's the reason for the 75,000. There's no intent to spend it tomorrow if it passes.
Thank you. Other questions and discussion on Article 10? And I should have noted that the Board of Selectmen does recommend that article, 5-0. Seeing there are no questions in the discussion, Article 10 will go on the ballot as written. Article 11, fire alarms. This town ordinance is to regulate the use of fire alarms in the town of Newton and to further regulate and control the false alarms that emanate therefrom. By definition, alarm is a signaling device of any description which is designed for the purpose of summoning the fire department of the town of Newton. False alarm is an alarm that is activated and causes the response of the fire department of the town of Newton where there is no valid cause or reason for the alarm to have been activated, including an alarm that is activated through mechanical failure, malfunction, improper installation, or negligence. An alarm shall not be considered a false alarm when it is activated by an act of God, including but not limited to power outages, hurricanes, earthquakes, and other uncontrollable circumstances. Whenever an alarm is activated by whatever means with the result that there is a response by the fire department, a record of the alarm shall be made and kept by the fire department of the town of Newton. Whenever 3 or more false alarms are caused within a 12-month period within the fiscal year January 1st through January 31st, the owners or persons in control of said alarm shall be subject to paying a fine of $150. Starting with the 4th occurrence and including each occurrence up to the 6th occurrence, the fine shall be $450, be it a business activation. Starting with the 7th and subsequent occurrences for the remaining fiscal year, the fine shall be $700 for each occurrence thereafter. Any fines imposed and collected under this section shall be turned over to the treasurer of the town of Newton and placed into the Uniformed Fire Watch Details Revolving Fund for the Newton Fire Department, established per warrant Article 5 during the 2018 town warrant. Any alarm installed subsequent to the effective date of the town ordinance, which is an audible type of alarm, shall be equipped with an automatic shut-off device that will shut off the audible component of the alarm within 30 minutes of the activation. Board of Selectmen does not recommend this article 4-1. I think probably we should hear first from the fire chief, and then if the selectmen want to address it.
Yeah, just real quick, we think that's a typo.
Yeah.
So it should read, the Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 4-1.
Okay, fair enough.
If somebody can back me up that on the minutes, Diane, does
I
that
got 'em
sound?
right here.
Yeah.
I've got them.
Okay, fair enough. So the selectmen have amended their statement, that's fine. Chief.
In a nutshell, for a nice big warrant article, there are several commercial/multi-family dwellings, I don't want to single anybody out, that the fire department can respond to 3, 4, 5 times in a day. Right now, the taxpayers are paying for the fire department to be dispatched to a property owner that does not want to maintain their fire alarm. In my opinion, that is unfair to the residents of the town of Newton, other than its cost and the taxpayers for the salaries, wear and tear on unnecessary equipment. The reason, so there could be, what I have found in my previous job is if a landlord has monetary loss they usually will fix that fire alarm. In regards to having it automatically shut off in 30 minutes, I am shocked that there are individuals in this room that live in a certain community that did not call me up at 2 o'clock in the morning when certain fire alarms were going off and we couldn't gain access to the building, and it just rang and rang until early that morning till the contractor got there. So I'm shocked, I'm thankful. But that's the reason for the automatic shut off. Fire department cannot reset a fire alarm. No problem.
Other questions or discussion on article? Ms. Collier?
I'm just wondering what the cost is per incident of having to go and check on a fire alarm. Does $150 cover it, or is that a loss to the town? I'm wondering if it's high enough and often enough. 3 false alarms within a year seems like an awful lot of leeway right now. So I'd like some thought on it.
Steve, you want to tackle that one?
It's a tough question, and the reason for that is we had one repeat from smoking in a building that occupies 24 apartments. You had the chief and one member show up, and I think that was at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's difficult. We had a commercial building that we had 10 members show up with 3 trucks. It's a safety issue on the other side too, because crying wolf too much. That particular apartment complex, I can tell you, makes some of us very nervous that when you get there and there's one person standing outside, which means there are 23 more families inside that building that are ignoring those fire alarms. So to answer your question, Ann, it varies. It could be $50 up to $300-400. Right now, commercial buildings, we have an automatic response since there are no ladder trucks in the area. That blast out fire is automatically dispatched to. I honestly couldn't give you that number because it varies. It's a call department. Depends on who shows to that call.
Could you hang on? Don't go anyplace. I just want to know what the rationale is of 3 false alarms being okay, and then the 4th one they start to have to pay. The 7th one they have to pay more. I just don't understand the rationale. It seems to me it's a little liberal, and maybe the fees should be higher in this, is what I'm wondering, and more frequent.
We were trying to be fair, because sometimes there are false alarms that could be a spider walking in front of the photo cell. Just trying to be a little lenient is what we're doing. And like I said earlier, in my past, once most landlords and property owners knew that there's a town ordinance in effect, that they're going to be fined, they usually rectify the problem awful quick before it gets to that 3rd one. Okay? I can honestly tell you there's 2 major ones. They knew about this warrant article, and Cap can back me up. We haven't been out there probably for about a month now.
Okay, thank you.
So either they're shut off or they're starting to rectify the problem.
Before you leave, Jim Baker, resident. I would assume if you found that these amounts weren't adequate, you'd come back and ask for more next year, right? Yeah.
It's a starting point. We're trying to be nice, is what it is. We're trying to be nice. And like I said, 24 apartment buildings, 24 tenants in 1 apartment building. I'm sure 150, or even the highest one, is going to be a drop in the bucket. Okay, we're doing this more not for the monies, we're doing it more for life safety. The fire department does not like showing up, especially to those buildings, and there's families living in those buildings and they're not coming out for fire alarm. Don't make a difference if it's during the day or the middle of the night. There's an issue, there's a problem. So we're hoping that this kind of wakes people up.
Thank you. Ms. Gagne.
I applaud the concept behind this warrant article. I would just like to make a motion for 2 amendments, so I'll start with the first one. The first one, I move to amend the part with, and take out the open parenthesis within the fiscal year, January 1 through December 31, close parenthesis. My concern is that if an alarm goes off December 30th, 31, January 1, January 2, you've got four days in a row, and you're not able to impose that fine to encourage them to do something because it's a different fiscal year. So that's my first.
Okay, so let me just, I'm going to restate that to make sure we understand. So the change would be that instead of being within a 12-month period, you know, that's within the fiscal year, it's just within a 12-month period. So any false alarm, if you have one false alarm, you better not have two more until at least a year after the first one. That's the idea. I'm not suggesting that as text, but that's the explanation. So yes, that would be the effect of that amendment. So the amendment would be to strike the text within that paragraph. Lisa, do you want to take them one at a time, or do you want to pair the amendments?
I can pair them up.
Well, we can take them one at a time. That might be easier.
I don't care either way.
Okay, do we have any discussion or comments? Well, we need a second first.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment.
So you're removing the calendar year part?
Right, so the effect of it is that it's a year period from the.
I mean, there's pros and cons to it, because if you got an alarm in February, say, and then you got, once February goes away, it will start in March. So you can still get away within a 12-month period to have three and not get fined. You know what I'm trying to say? So if you got one in January and say another one in March, and if you ended up with another one before December, you can get fined. But if you did January and February, and then once you go beyond a month's or 12-month period, if you're into the following year, say of February, you go back 12 months, those other two aren't going to count anyway. So
I'm referring to when you have it, say in the wintertime, you have one in October, November, December, January, February, March. That's 6 alarms.
right.
But only, the way this is written, it's only 3 in fiscal year 2023 and 3 in fiscal year 2024. Removing the within the fiscal year would then make that count 6 within a 12-month period.
Okay. I'm all set.
Chief, on the amendment?
Thank you, Lisa. Again, trying to be nice. I like Mrs. Gagne's better than me trying to be nice. I'm glad somebody else brought it up.
Okay. So, on the amendment, do we have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes carry, so the phrase is struck from the article. It's between the two parentheses. Ms. Gagne.
All right, now, based on the chief's description of the purpose of this warrant article, I would like to move to amend it to make it clearer to the voters. So where it says, whenever an alarm is activated, add at a commercial, retail, or multifamily building of 4 units or more, and then continue with the rest of it. The chief said the purpose is because of these 24-unit apartments, these commercial buildings, they're the ones that are setting off these alarms, and it will alleviate a lot of single-family residents' concerns that if their alarms go off, they're going to get hit with these fees.
Yeah, I just want, Chief Dinesh, hang on for 1 second. Let's make sure we got the text right on that. If you could just say it again.
Yes. So whenever an alarm is activated, insert at a commercial, retail, or multifamily building of 4 units or more.
Do we have a second? Okay. Go ahead, Chief.
To touch off, to go on what Ms. Gagne said, if you want, instead of doing that whole thing, just take the word, just put non-residential. State of New Hampshire, 3 or more apartments is considered a multifamily. So you can't use the number 4. So if you want to use 3, you can use 3 and above, or just take and just remove the word residential, or not to include residential structures.
I accept that friendly amendment.
That'll make it a lot easier.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's an excellent amendment. I'm just going to ask Chief if you stick with a second, let's get the text correct. You have that?
No, I have hers. I don't
Okay, so, and Lisa's going to kind of take this, I guess, as an amendment to hers, just as, we'll call it a friendly amendment. So help me out, Chief, let's just get that text again. So after, whenever an alarm is activated, what you're saying, at a non-residential
Structure. That'll take care of your 1 and 2 family homes.
Okay, yeah, that excludes 1 and 2 family homes in the state of New Hampshire. Correct. Okay, so let me repeat that for the benefit of the voters, just to make it clear. So the proposed amendment text would now is the phrase "at a non-residential structure," which would be inserted directly after "whenever an alarm is activated." So the sentence would read, "Whenever an alarm is activated at a non-residential structure, by whatever means, with the result that there is a response by the fire department," and so on. That's the amendment we're making. We're inserting the phrase "at a non-residential structure." So, discussion on that amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Wait, hold it.
Just one question. Chief, have you had problems with residential structures that are they wired into the fire department at all, or? No?
We have,
Yeah,
but not as fast as commercial.
Okay.
They've never made it to 3.
thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, so we kind of jumped the gun on the vote there. I didn't catch Jim looking at me and getting up. So let's just redo the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry, so it is amended to add the phrase "at a non-residential structure." Any further discussion on the article as a whole? I don't think so. Okay, so seeing there is no further discussion on Article 11, we'll go on the ballot as amended. Okay, Article 12. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,363 for the following community services. Area Home Care and Family Services, $3,800. Child Advocacy Center, $2,000. Drugs Are Dangerous, $2,500. Haven, $3,050. The New Hampshire SPCA, $750. Rockingham County Community Action, $5,000. Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels, $2,927. Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels Transportation, $700. The SOROC Coalition for Healthy Youth, $4,936. The Vic Geary Center, $2,700. And Waypoint for $2,000. The total being $30,363. This article would have an estimated $0.047, or about a nickel, increase per 1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend the article. Who on the board would like to speak to that?
These are all great community services. The Meals on Wheels is great. The Drugs Are Dangerous. I know Chief Jewett has talked on that in the past. The Child Advocacy Center they're all good. They're all worth the money.
I think the key thing to remember is this stuff's behind the curtain type stuff. The average resident, thankfully, doesn't necessarily need these services, but there are plenty who do.
Any other comments or discussion regarding these? Ms. Collier.
Hi, I'm just wondering if these are the same levels as last year, or have they increased with inflation, or? where do we stand?
I don't know what last year's numbers were.
I will, hold on.
Hold on.
One moment.
Thank you.
So, last year we had, Lamprey did the transportation for the seniors, and they stopped doing it. So this year, Rockingham Nutrition Meals on Wheels Transportation is getting paid the same amount. Actually, I take that back. They're asking for $700 this year instead of $1,600. And, the only other one that changed, Waypoint was asking for $1,000 last year. They've increased it to $2,000.
Okay, so almost all of them are the same
Yes.
or even a little less.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that these services basically take the place of our needing a full-time social worker in the town, that it provides social services as needed at points. I'm wondering if maybe we shouldn't increase it a little bit this year. I would offer an amendment to, what's the inflation rate, 10%? To $33,500.
But these organizations submit to us what they need.
Exactly.
Even if we went up 10%, how would we distribute that to each one of those?
To be distributed equally with 10% to each one?
We could, but
But this is what they have asked for.
exactly like.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pavero.
Mike Pavero, resident in Newton. I've asked this before. This is a reoccurring warrant every single year, and I can't remember the answer. Jamie Fitzpatrick brought it up that this is a misleading warrant because most of it's in the budget. It's not increasing taxes. It was in last year's budget. Is there no mechanism we can put in place, and like Annie said, bump this up to $32,000 and just leave it as an item in the budget that somebody is in control of, allocating this to these agencies, and this doesn't have to show up every year. It shows up every single year. Can we not make it go away off a warrant?
Well, I think part of that is you have new people that ask to be funded, and you have other people that don't. And then the amounts change,
Well,
and
that's back to Annie's question. Bump it up a little bit. I don't think anybody in this room or anybody that's a voter is going to deny these agencies funds. So let's up it to cover the increase and make it a one-time deal.
the board certainly can do that, but the first year, you take a chance if the budget fails, they don't get anything. That's why the
Wouldn't it be in
warrant,
the default budget from last year?
no.
Because it was a.
These are warrant articles. This isn't anything to do with the budget or the operating budget, unless we put it in the operating budget. These are nonprofit people, and I'm not sure how that would work in the default.
It wouldn't be like a contractual thing?
I don't think so. These are people that are asking, like So Rock last year came in and asked to be put on. Now that they've got the agreement or the payment for, the board voted for it, now it can go in this list. So it does fluctuate, and I know it's a pain, but it's a sure way that the people can either say, yeah, we want to do it, or we don't.
I don't think they've ever said no.
No, probably not. But I'm just saying, it's up to the board. They can do whatever they want to do.
Well, I think there may be an issue that, and this is in the back of my head, but Mike, there may be an issue that these are not contracts for service in some cases. In other words, they are providing a service, but because the nature of the nonprofit organization, they're not sending an invoice over and saying, hey, we did these charitable acts for you. So there's from like a state accounting point of view, it's almost as if we made a donation to a charity from the town, which I don't think we can do without a vote from the legislative body. So that's part of the problem.
Can we do this at this meeting? Make that part of the operating budget?
But I don't think from the operating budget, I don't think the selectmen can make a donation to a nonprofit. Right? This is why this thing keeps coming back. Is that,
Now, I couldn't remember the answer.
yeah, I think that's the answer. I mean, and I'm, you know, and I'm not.
I'm funny
offer
like
some
that.
kind
I
of
try to
complicated
make things
opinion.
simple.
But I believe that's part of the problem, because if these were vendors, you know, imagine we got an invoice from the, you know, Haven or somebody and said, hey, you know, we did these 9 things for you, and every time we come and do whatever our special, you know, they all are different, but I mean, whatever they do, what they're doing, they send us an invoice, then they're a vendor, and the selectmen can just put it in the budget and pay them like any other vendor. But in some cases, that's not how it works, right? We're making a donation to a nonprofit organization who does a lot for us, but they don't line it up by like invoices or anything, right? So there's no, it's not like we're contracting with a vendor, right? We're supporting them, right? I mean, I don't think the Vic Geary Center, I don't think the Vic Geary Center can point at what they did for us.
No.
You know what I mean? They're not like a vendor. We support them, and a lot of people from our community go there and take advantage of their programs and all that kind of stuff. But that, I think, is the problem. Like, I think that's and it's not a.
And that's the only risk, what Nancy said. If this was not, if we were to make this a one-type warrant article and it got approved and the budget passed this year, then this would be there forever and ever. It's only if the budget failed.
What I'm trying to say, Mike, is I don't think we can move the money out.
At all.
I think that under state law, the town can't donate money raised by the taxpayers to a charity. Right? We can hire them to do something, right? But we can't structure it as a donation. And these organizations, the way they're set up to take donations. So, and again, that's probably a question for the town council, but I think that's the answer from last time.
And anybody new has to do a petition warrant article to put it before the voters, as well as give their financial statements to show they are nonprofit and that they're not making money.
They're 401.
Right, right.
So anyway, I think the problem is not so much we wouldn't love to do it, and the voters wouldn't love to do it, but we're kind of stuck.
Well, at least the good thing is they're not individually posted on the warrant. That's happened before, and it takes forever to get through them all. At least it's one article.
Any other discussion on Article 12?
I can't quite let it go because of the difficulty that people are having. I'd really like to hear from Tricia about, and possibly from the police chief, about how people are doing in town and how these services are helping to deal with people with COVID and all the depression and the high rates of abuse and suicide and things like that that we're reading about all the time. I'd just like to see how Newton is doing at addressing those things and what the plans are, and how these different agencies interface with that.
Thank you.
Bob?
Chief, do you want to tackle it, Nancy?
I can just say in the town report, we get reports from these people, and some of them have minimal activity and others have more. So it is listed in their reports in the town report. And a lot of times, the people don't really need the services, or if it's not available here, they come to the welfare agent, and that's what that budget is for. But we have no complaints from the police or anybody else. Tina has always said that we're doing well. So, I mean, they want to bring it forth, the budget can be increased a little bit, but to just randomly give extra money to different organizations until you know for sure that we're really getting our money's worth, I mean, it's something that needs to be looked into. Not that it's a lot of money what you want to add, I'm just saying next year it'll go up more and more and more, and then it becomes a point where the people aren't going to support it anymore either.
Mike Jewett, Police Chief. For the last probably 6 or 7 years, I've spoke on this warrant article, I think, almost every year. These services, like Selectman Burrow had said, they're behind the scenes. These are used frequently. And I didn't bring up the list, but there's a list of these, and we use every single one of them. They do different services. It may not be something that they come out and help us. They may give us advice on something or send someone in the right direction. I just had officers tied up the other day for 2.5 hours with a homeless individual that was in town. So we were using some of these services to get that person what they needed. These services, they're there for those who need it. And it was said earlier, there probably isn't anyone in this room or anyone listening that wouldn't vote for these. I understand it, it's money. We're looking at $30,000 that were taken out of taxes. We're raising taxes to pay for this, I get it. But these are services that, this could be a neighbor, it could be a neighbor's neighbor. These are people that need our services, and what was asked is, how are we as the PD doing with mental health? We deal with it on a daily basis. We have people that we deal with on car stops, just people in town that we're seeing different mental health stuff is coming up more and more. It was, like Ms. Collier said, it was about having a social worker in town. Unfortunately, at this point, we are that social worker. We're that quick Band-Aid, and I tell people that's all we are is a Band-Aid. I'm not a counselor, don't come sit on my couch. We can help for a few minutes and get you to the right people that need the help, and the group of people that are here help us with that. And I've been here 20 years, and the mental health piece has always been part of it. It just seems that it's more exposed now, and I don't have an answer for that. But we can tell by the calls that we're going to. Same with the fire department going on some of these calls that we go to. We're staging them because it's not safe for them to come in because it's a mental health issue. Definitely an issue that we have in town, and I'm thankful that the board's provided and allowed these people to come and give services to town. I just think they're a great group of organizations, and hey, I wish we could give them more money, but they are only budgeting based upon, I believe it's population. They take how many residents you have and they divide it up, and I think each town, if you went into different towns, I think the numbers are different, and it's based on population, and that's what they're figuring it at. I'm sure if you told them, hey, increase it, they'd love to, but I think, if that's what they're asking for, and if they can make those numbers work, and a lot of these people come in on their own time, and, they're getting this stuff done.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on Article 12? Seeing none, it'll go on to the ballot as originally written. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, as proposed by the Recreation Commission, the sum of $4,500 for recreational programs and trips for Newton senior citizens. This article would result in an estimated 0.007 increase per $1,000, that's under a penny, of assessed value raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen recommends it. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, Jamie Fitzpatrick. As Mike had stated in the previous one, it looks like it's increasing taxes. We give this amount of money. It's the same amount that we gave last year. There's no change in taxes. Our senior citizens pay full tax rates to support the town and to support the school, which is a much higher tax burden. And they, generally speaking, don't have children in the school. So this is a little give back to people that contribute quite a lot to the community for the services they get. And it's not really an increase in taxes from where we were last year, because we had this in last year's budget. So I support this.
I think to kind of answer it based on that question is 13 and 14 as well. The recreation budget is so small. If we were to add these two into the recreation budget, then you'd have this, I think it'd double the recreation budget or more than that. So that's typically why you see these every year. But 13, as Jamie said, it's, I think this originated when Selectman Donovan was on the board, but it's to kind of offset what the seniors are already paying just a little bit, and to highlight the fact that we are trying to take steps like that, and always passes, right, every year that I've been in town, but it also is well attended, all that good stuff. So I think I know what Mike's going to say.
Mr. Favero, put it in the budget.
I think you're eligible, Mike, to go to these.
I probably am, Matt. Thank you. Thank you.
If that was your question, I don't know.
No, that wasn't the question. So it's too late this year But I would like to tell the Board of Selectmen, just put this in your operating budget. I know you just said that it looks like the budget has exploded because you have such a small budget, but if we're gonna go every year, put it on a warrant, and the voters are gonna approve it, it's an operating cost. Just move it to the rec budget and take it off warrants. It is too late this year. We have no mechanism in order to do that, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's done. Yeah. But I would really like the Board of Selectmen to just take these off warrants, put it in your operating budget under rec. Thank you.
Any other discussion on Article 13? Seeing there is none, Article 13 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, as proposed by the Recreation Commission, the sum of $16,500 to hire 4 part-time lifeguards, 1 part-time supervisor of lifeguards, and to purchase the necessary safety equipment to oversee the safety of all swimmers at the town beach between May 2022 and September 2022. This article would result in an estimated .025, that's about 3 cents, increase per $1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. The Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0, and I'm going to just take the moderator's prerogative and mention that I'm looking forward to the weather being warm enough that we can go to the beach instead of shovel our driveways. So the Selectmen, please.
Yeah, it always seems funny to be talking about this in February, but yeah, like we said earlier, you know, you've seen this before. It stayed flat since last year. You know, the only concern is trying to find lifeguards these days, as many jobs are hard to find people, but lifeguards, you've probably seen in the news how difficult it is to find lifeguards. So hopefully this will pass and we can immediately get to the recruitment phase.
Yes, sir. No, he's going out the door. Other discussion questions on this article? Seeing there are none, Article 14 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 15, to see if the town will vote, as proposed by the Board of Selectmen, to raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 to be paid towards the 2022 solid waste disposal budget as an offset to the recycling and disposal costs, and to authorize the withdrawal of $60,000 from the Transfer Station Recycling Special Revenue Fund created in 2003 for this purpose. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. And Selectmen?
This is something that we do every single year. So I'm really in favor of it, to be honest with you.
Other discussion or comments on this warrant article? Seeing there are none, Article 15 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 16, to see if the town will vote, as proposed by the Board of Selectmen, to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of purchasing a dirt screener, with the $10,000 to come from the Transfer Station Recycling Special Revenue Fund created in 2003 for this purpose. This article would result in no increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. Selectmen?
Yep. The transfer station manager put this in because what we have down there is we have that burn pile. I don't know if anybody's noticed it, but we've got it chipped up. It was quite expensive. And what he would like to do is get a screener down there so that he could screen that material, and as well as the leaf piles and stuff that we have down there, so that it could be either given to the residents, sold to the residents, or whatever.
Ms. Moore?
Question, right now we're looking to put $70,000 and take it out of that fund. Does the treasurer have any idea of how much is in that fund currently? Yeah.
Now give us a moment so we can get that. The question was, in case it didn't get clear on the to people that are listening remotely, is
There is $200,000
$363,054 in the transfer station recycling fund.
So could you repeat that?
I'm going to repeat that. The question was of this, what is in this fund the transfer station recycling special revenue fund? And if I heard correctly from across the room, it's in the order of $263,000? Correct. With some change. So there's a significant amount of money there. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Jamie Fitzpatrick, I was going to ask the same question, so thank you. But just so that people are aware, this fund built up because we were able to sell things from the transfer station to China primarily for significant money, and the fund's built up. When we take this out, it's not happening this year or next year, but within the next few years, not going to be any money in this fund. So this isn't like it's going to replenish it. We're just not getting a lot of money for what we transfer out anymore. So people should be aware of that.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments regarding it? Mr. Rivero.
I would not, in favor of this thing, only because it's a $10,000 line item for a screener. You don't get much of a screener for $10,000. Second, you have the maintenance and wear and tear to screeners. I think the thought process is sound. There's stuff down there that needs to be screened. Maybe annually, maybe every 2 years. You're better off renting a screener. Do what you have to do with it and get rid of it. You don't want another maintenance item.
Other comments, discussion regarding Article 16? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Let me get Mr. Melvin first.
Yeah, I'd just like to see if Mr. Rivero has any information on what the cost of renting a screener is.
Okay, thank you. We'll get that, Mr. Melvin.
Okay. To answer Jim Fitzpatrick's question, basically is we take in money every single day from residents from Newton, Kingston, East Kingston, and Southampton for their bulk items. So we're making money there every day.
Mr. Rivero.
To answer Andy's question, they vary. There's all different size screeners, different durations of rental. Probably the best rental is a week, because it's 3 days and you get it for 5. But I can't give you a specific number. I don't know what that number would be. But if you had a year's worth of screening, you'd get a bigger screener and knock it out in a week, and then send it away.
Would 10,000 cover it?
A one-time rental? Oh yeah, and then some.
Ms. Moore.
Previously in my another life, I was a treasurer, acting treasurer, I should say. And in answer to Selectman Melvin saying that we collect bulk fees, we do, but we don't collect anywhere near $60,000 a year, just so you're aware. I'm guessing maybe on a good year, it's a little over 12. Something to be aware of. We do collect from other things though, but a lot of that, like Mr. Fitzpatrick said, has gone down. The cardboard, I don't think we get any money for anymore. We have to pay out. So something to be aware of.
So based on Mr. Rivero's input, I'd like to propose an amendment to this article to say, for the purposes of purchasing or renting a dirt screener, to give the option to the transfer station and the selectmen for what makes the best decision as they look at various options.
I'll second for discussion. Does this change the intent of the warrant article?
No, I don't think so.
That's my number one thing with these
As long
things.
as
is that we don't-
purchasing is in there or renting, that should be
It's the
fine.
same topic. So, the discussion, the amendment, just to make it clear, and I'm repeating some of this stuff, so if people didn't hear it the first time who were listening remotely, they'll get it the second time. So the amendment would be, it would state for the purpose of purchasing or renting a dirt screener. And then that decision would be reached presumably by the selectmen and in cooperation with the people at the transfer station.
And so if anybody's wondering, if we rented a dirt screener for like $2,000, the $8,000 will go back into the
said it, I
revolving
didn't know if
fund.
it's part of the
So if anybody's wondering, we're gonna have this money laying around if we do that. That's not the case, so.
Right. Okay, discussion on the amendment.
I have one question. So Annie, you're just asking to put in the wording "or rent"?
It would be or renting, because it's purchasing or renting.
Okay, because you said, so the transfer station and the selectmen can make a decision. I just want to make sure that's not part of the wording.
No, it was purchasing or renting.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Favero.
Now, I just want to clarify, it won't go into the general fund. It'll stay in, whatever you don't use will stay in the
Correct.
The special fund.
special fund.
Yeah, sorry, I
Okay,
get my.
just wanted to
funds
make sure.
mixed up. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, any other further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All opposed? There are no nays, it carries. So the article will be amended to state, for the purpose of purchasing or renting a dirt screener. Any other discussion on the article, Article 16, and the article as a whole? Seeing there is none, Article 16 as amended will go on to the ballot. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be deposited into the Skateboard Park Expendable Trust Fund created in 2021 for the purpose of repairing, constructing, reconstructing, and maintaining the skateboard park located in Greenie Park. This article would result in an estimated 0.015 or penny and a half, or it's 2 cents, increase per 1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this article 5-0. Who wants to take that for the Selectmen?
I can take it really quick. There was an article like this. It was a petition warrant article last year, you may remember. There's a plan afoot by a citizens group to redo this skateboard park, and this is as far as I'm concerned, a help those who help themselves situation, because they went out this year, and that group raised a ton of money and brought it back to the town. I forget the number, I don't have it in front of me.
3,000 something.
How many?
3,000 something.
3,000. So this is more to help that along. I know skateboard parks are very, a niche sort of audience, but what you have to remember is over there, that park gets used by a bunch of different people, and now you have the eyesore, if you want to call it, or really more than an eyesore, is a danger situation with this old skate park that's deteriorating. So that's it.
Also, I'd like to add that the chairman and myself are working with the state in reference to a matching grant, and this is what they're trying to do, is get up their share of the grant so that we can do this. And we met with them last summer, and we're going to be meeting with them again this summer.
Mr. Favero.
Do we know what the total cost and conceptual plan of that skateboard park's gonna be?
Approximately 200,000.
How many?
Approximately 200,000.
200,000?
Yeah. That's
Okay,
what
so
we've been
we're-
told.
So we're a long way.
We're away from our 100,000.
Okay, which is okay. I just, if this is gonna be a reoccurring
Well, it's gonna be a
warrant,
process.
then we should kind of have a target goal of what we're looking to
Yeah.
achieve.
Other questions or discussion regarding Article 17? Seeing there is none, Article 17 will go on the ballot as presented. Article 18, by a petition of 25 or more eligible voters in the town of Newton, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,000 to support a lake host program at the Newton Town Boat Ramp for the 2022 summer season. The Lake Host Program is a collaborative effort between New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, New Hampshire Lakes, and local lake associations. It trains and employs individuals to provide courtesy boat inspections to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive plants, such as milfoil, from one lake to another, thereby protecting public lake uses such as swimming, fishing, and boating. This article would result in an estimated 0.003 or a third of a penny increase per $1,000 of assessed value to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen does recommend this Article 5-0. And then there is an italicized portion after that that is included in this warrant. I don't think it's meant to be a part of the article, but I'm going to read it anyway. In 2021, Country Pond Lake Association, CPLA of Newton, organized a lake host program that provided over 509 hours of inspection time at the Newton Town Boat Ramp. In 2022, CPLA plans to expand that to 565 hours of inspection time with a total cost of $5,300. Funding for this program will come from town support via this warrant article, a matching New Hampshire Lakes grant, and CPLA member donations. So, who would like to address that?
Bob, I put that in there only because it's part of their petitioned article.
Included in the petition. Okay.
Yeah, and it was on there last year, only DRA said this year to put the selectmen's recommendation after the warrant article, then put the italicized after.
Okay, so, all right, so it's, they're okay with it
They're
being
okay with it, yep.
after this?
Yep.
Okay.
They recommended that. I had to do that.
So, just as a sort of informative thing for people, there is another party to all these procedures of the warrant articles, which is the state government, who has a department that looks at a revenue funding, Department of Revenue Administration, which we always just call the DRA, looks at these, and so it looks like their position is, that's fine. Now, normally a petition warrant article goes on exactly as petitioned, and it looked like this was like stuck afterwards as a parenthetical, but if that's what the DRA thinks the way it should
Well,
be
I had
presented.
everything together within the recommendation, and they said, no, the recommendation needs to go with the official warrant article, and you can keep the verbiage in there. And because it was on the petition, I kept it in there.
Okay, that's fine. So, that's fine. We just want to make sure we got the right form that the state wants. So, forget my grammatical or textual, presentation issue. It'll be just as it looks. Discussion on the petition article itself. Do we have one of the petitioners who'd like to speak to it first? Petitioners always get the first shot at speaking on an article. Seeing no one, raising their hand or standing up, Mr. Pavero.
I've worked at the association a lot this year. We've had multiple meetings on this boat ramp. The budget number on the boat ramp repair is probably $60,000 to $70,000. It's a whole drainage system that has to be involved. Really needs to be done every year almost. We go down there and maintain the boat ramp, but it's literally a waste of time. It just washes away. So it has to be done in a more permanent fashion. That association, they do a lot of work. They're pretty active. They're working on grant money for that. So, I mean, it's really a no-brainer at that cost, the $2,000.
Thank you.
Jim Baker, resident. The people who live on the lake have an additional assessment on their property. It's per water frontage foot. It's about $200 a foot. So last time I looked, it was about a $500,000 addition to the town assessed value. When that waterfront assessment was first put in by this, authorized by the state for towns to do this, that money was supposed to go towards maintenance of lakes and ponds and that sort of thing. And in a sense, it's happening through the state department that was referenced. But it's not a direct dollar to dollar. It's whatever grants you get. So this lake association has been very active, as Mike said, for several years now. And if you look at what happened in Kingston with the Powwow Pond and with some of the ponds there with the invasive weeds, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to help try to clean those up. And once you've got them, it's a real problem. So this is a pittance, in my mind, to pay. These people stand at the ramp when boats come in, they inspect them and make sure that to the extent that they can, that these weeds don't get into the lake. So that's my,
Thank you. Ms. Gagne.
So I do want to clarify for those listening or, viewing, that this courtesy boat inspection, it's not mandatory. These inspectors, if you will, these volunteers, will be at the boat ramps and offering to inspect the boats for these invasive aquatic plants. You can refuse, so there is no fee, no fine, no nothing. This is just a proactive, courtesy way of trying to prevent invasive species coming from a different lake and then winding up in our lakes and then taking over our lakes, and now we can't swim in them anymore. So it's a good program. It's a little bit of money, well worth it.
Any other discussion or comments on Article 18? Seeing there are none, Article 18 will be put on the ballot as presented by the committee. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as proposed for the trustees and trust fund the sum of $150 for the purpose of increasing the stipend paid to the trustees and trust fund from $750 to $900. Monies to come from general taxation, majority vote required. Article will result in an insignificant increase per thousand assessed value to be raised by taxes. Board of Selectmen recommend this article 5-0. Who wants to tackle that?
Joe?
Someone shut the power off here. Joe Simone, one of the trustees of the trust funds. We put this article in only because we do a lot of work for the town behind the scenes, and we really don't get compensated on an hourly basis or anything like that, but we maintain 22 trust funds. We write all the checks for the town when they come in and that are applied against the trust funds. We do reports for the state, and we also do reports for the town book. So we're just asking for just a little more. I think the last increase was 2007. Just a little more to cover our expenses because we use our own vehicles and stuff like that. So that's it. Thank you.
Excuse me.
By the way, thanks to the trustees of the trust fund.
Your microphone's not working. So here, use mine. Thank you.
So do we have to do the whole meeting over again?
No, we don't. So minor technical detail there, but any other discussion on Article 19? Ms. Gagne?
First, I have a question. How many trust accounts do we have right now? 22. Now, I just want people to understand that what the trustees do, among other things, your reporting and things like that, is every amount of money that comes in, they have to make those deposits. Every expense that needs to be paid out, they have to write those checks. Every month, they have to balance those 22 accounts. At the end of the year, they need to make sure that they have reconciled with the bank, with the town, and that all of the money is accounted for and reported properly. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. $150 increase is not a lot of money for the work that they do.
Thank you. Mr. Simone?
That will be spread out amongst 3 people, so it's not just going to one person.
May I?
Of course.
Okay. I'd also like to add that years ago in the 90s, I did this job. And like they said, they got an increase in '07. They want an increase now. 2 increases of very little money over the past 20-something years. Well worth it. All the things that Lisa said that these trustees do is a lot of work. The one thing is the most work is the reports at the end of the year. $900 alone is what they deserve just to do that ridiculous report. I know it, I've done it. It's money that they deserve to have.
It also keeps the town out of, I guess, the good graces of the DRA.
Correct. So, any other discussion on Article 19?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'd like to suggest an amendment that rather than saying that it's going to increase it from 750 to 900, to say that it will increase the stipend of each trustee from $250 to $300. Making it clear that these people aren't getting $900, they're only getting $300.
Somebody in the room has to make that motion.
Yeah, we're actually going to need that motion from somebody that's physically here. So, can somebody, what's that?
Who was that?
Right, in essence, Lisa, you just stand up here, please, and make that motion.
All right. Since I do have to understand where he's going with this, so I would move to amend Article 19 to replace from 750 to 300 to $250 to $300 per trustee. That's provided. There are 3 trustees, correct? Correct. Yep. So 250 to 300.
Can I make a
For a total of $900
Per trustee.
No. 200 from, so
Trustee.
cross out 750 to 900, and then add in from $250 to $300 per trustee for a total of $900. Well, I think we might need that total $900 for DRA or whatever, so just, I figure it's better to cover it.
No, the increase is 150. You know, if you put the 900 in there, you're going to
For a total of
confuse people.
$150 increase. Or just drop it. Okay, we'll drop it. Just from $250 to $300 per trustee. But see, it doesn't say how many trustees. And that's why I wanted for a total of $900. I like that.
But the original thing says you're going to increase it by $150.
Yeah.
For all 3.
Right. $50 each, $150 total.
We'll start with that.
So do we have a second on the amendment?
I'll second.
Mr. Favero.
I would like to raise the number.
I was afraid of that.
I work with a lot of people in this town that are drastically underpaid. So, and I know Joe, I know the other people who work in this, it's almost a volunteer basis. Can we make it $400 a person? Are we good with that? Make it a total of $1,200?
Make a motion, I'll second it.
I make a motion to raise it.
We need to clarify the motion that's on the
Right,
table
just hang on for a second.
All right, and then just add the number to it when you're done.
Well, I got it. But what we often do to avoid amending amendments, which gets complicated, is we're just going to, we haven't really voted on the first amendment yet. Joe, hold on for a second. Let's just get the amendment straight. So, Lisa, your amendment would become, if you're accepting...
From $250 to $400 per trustee for a total of $1,200. And that would then change the $150 and $150 to, that's what, $150 per? So that'd be $450. Spelled out and in number. You know what I'm saying?
Like you're adding 150
Raise and
times...
appropriate the sum of $450 in typed and numeric form. And then change the 750 to 900 to the 250 to
Okay.
400, et cetera.
Right, so I'm going to try to read what would be the amendments. Just hang on one second. Let's try to read the amendment. We'll second that again, and then we can discuss that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the way the original article was written was a recommendation of the DRA.
Yeah.
So that's why it was written that way. So to change it right now might be kind of like going against the DRA.
We wrote it so many different ways, and it was confusing no matter what. DRA actually wrote this one.
Okay, so that puts me in a tough position because I can't necessarily, let's just talk strategy for a second. If we think we want to keep it the way the DRA wrote it, which is probably a smart idea, then it would seem that the text of that amendment, Lisa, would be just figure out the total amount, right? Don't change the verbiage per person, and then just bump up the total amount to match the intent of what you're all trying to do.
Change the three amounts, 150 to 450, 750, 750 would stay the same, and then 900 would become 400.
Right, so I'm going to just say what that amendment would be, and then we can get a second on that, and then we can talk about it. So the amendment would be the sum, instead of reading $150, it would now be $450. And the final number where it says from $750 to $900 would be from $750 to $1,200.
Second, need a second?
Okay, we got a second for discussion.
So what is the total amount that it's going up? 150 each?
No.
How much?
150.
150 each, yeah, 450 total.
So it'd be 150 each.
Right.
So, right, for the calculation of what that'll impact the taxpayers, right now I have 150 in there. I want the correct number that I can plug in to get.
450.
So 450, okay.
Total, yeah.
Sorry, we have to.
Just wanted to be
Logistics.
clear.
Okay, so discussion of what would be the amended article, where the initial amount would say for the sum of $450, and then it would say from $750 to $1,200.
Yep, okay.
Discussion on that.
One reason to take the per trustees out is if you lose a trustee, they still have to do the work.
So, any further discussion on the amendment? All in, I don't know which Mike's heading for the mic.
I'm really afraid to go to this, Mike, because we're this close to wrapping up and being out of here.
Right.
No good deed goes unpunished, right? I want to up the amount, but unless the people that are in this room or watching on TV, they're going to get to the podium or get to the voters' booth, and they're going to see an increase of what, 50%? Ish, whatever. So I don't want to follow up getting some money and not get any money. So we can't add some language into that because it's a DRA?
No, you can change it. The board, the townspeople
So
can
are we
change it.
putting the three people in it?
We can absolutely.
Yeah.
Prefer it that way?
Well, I think it's a better sell.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
What if you don't have 3 people?
It's gonna go in your hands.
But right now,
but let's talk about only right now in real time.
Tomorrow we can.
But if,
Can I? We're probably driving the people who are listening remotely crazy because they can't tell what we're talking about. The discussion is about, is there a way to convey that this amount of money is, in essence, not per person, per trustee, but for the total payment to the trustees? And I'm going to suggest, I'm not making an amendment, I'm suggesting it may be possible just to add a sentence at the end, which in essence says, this is the total payment for all of the trustees, or this payment is shared amongst the trustees.
three.
3 trustees.
Because if only 2's working, only 2 gets paid. The third one doesn't get paid. So that's the way it's always been done in the past. If you have 3 people and only 2 are doing the work, they get paid their portion and that's it.
Did you get that one, Lisa? I think that's the way to do it, is add a sentence at the end describing that it's between 3 people.
Right, so, well, let's try to do it this way. Why don't we, if we're in agreement, I'm just going to suggest a procedure here. Lisa, hang on 1 sec.
So it is 400.
Yeah, just hang on for a second. Why don't we try to do this in 2 passes? Let's do it, first off, the amount. right? I think we're all, let's just do the amount amendment and then try to figure out a sentence amendment for the end, right? Because it'll be easier just procedurally. So all in favor of amending the amount to read $450 and then the 900 becomes 1,200 to be consistent with that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. So we got the amount amended. Now the question is, do we have an amendment for a sentence that would be at the end, which maybe explains the way we have other explanatory sentences in other warrant articles, that this is for 3 trustees. So Ms. Gagne, hopefully you have one.
I have something. It's quick, so I didn't think about it too hard. So after the $900, do we want to do it before or after the monies to come from general
I would
tax?
put it way at the end myself.
Way at the end, after majority vote required. At the end, add this stipend to be equally distributed to each trustee, period.
What did,
If you need a second, I'll second that one.
There's your second.
this stipend, okay. Okay.
Discussion on that? Yeah, it is, the sentence would be added at the end that reads, this stipend is equally distributed to each trustee. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Jamie Fitzpatrick. And
Patrick,
it
sorry.
just, it seems to me that's a little more confusing. To each trustee, people could still think it's 1,200 to each. Should be distributed equally amongst the trustees, I think would be clearer to somebody reading the amendment,
Or,
reading the article.
or I have another suggestion, maybe after the $150, put $400 for each trustee at that point, for a total of.
Jim Baker again. If you say each trustee, and if you have 3, that works. If something happens to one of them and you have less than 3, that doesn't work. If you just say each trustee or amongst each trustee, then it's whoever many trustees there are. Did I get they're part of the total?
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
Okay, so, again, in not having to try to vote on amendments and stuff, Ms. Gagne, will you accept an amendment of the following form? I'll just put it out for discussion. This stipend is equally distributed among the trustees.
Yes.
Okay, discussion on that?
I'm still a second on that.
Thank you, we needed a second. Thank you, you seconded. Thank you, sir. Discussion. Seeing there is none, we're going to vote on it. All in favor of the amendment? Aye. All opposed? Hearing no nays, it passes, carries, so that the article will be twice amended with the change we did first, and then the sentence at the end, this stipend is equally distributed among the trustees. And it will go on the ballot as amended.
So Bob, the tax impact is 001. It's 0.001.
Right, so that we will update, the tax impacts gets updated on the warrant. That's not an amendment we vote on because that's just a calculation. But yeah, that'll be on there. Any other business before us today?
Just real quick, I think I speak for the board when people have to really understand, to get here today, we started back in November, sometimes earlier. Bunch of people do a ton of work. Some are here today, some submitted their stuff beforehand and are not here, but we all, as a community, typically pick this up today, right? And we start to be concerned today, but they did a ton of work for us to get here, so I thank everyone involved in this for doing all this work to, put these pages in front of us, so.
I'll second that. And as a final thing, thanks to everyone for coming. Participation is important. It's a vital part of our town. Thanks to the people who are online, who are joining us remotely. And I just need a motion motion to adjourn from the floor. Do we have a second?